Hello and welcome to All Four Wins Football. We are back. It's Lower League Lingo. We've reached episode number 25, a quarter of a century. Oh, what a time to be alive. And we're going to start it just over the other side of this. Well, hello, we are back. We're quite aware that most of you are probably watching the Premier League on TNT right now, so you're probably watching this back. But if that's what you're doing, welcome. Lovely to have you here and hope that you enjoy the show. We are all over Tier 5 today. We are looking at what is going on at the fifth level of the Women's Football Pyramid. And there's a fair bit to talk about, or even though there's not a huge myriad of games that have been played, with some clubs having not played at all, there is a lot going on, certainly at the top and the bottom of all of our leagues. So we're very much looking forward to have those conversations, and we are having them, of course, with our crack panel. I had to make sure I said that correctly, and I just about got there. Our crack panel, and they're here. But Gareth, sitting there just next to me. How are you doing, sir? You okay?
Lovely, thank you. Glad to be here, and looking forward to another good show. Lots to talk about. I know there's been some big movers and shakers in the northwest in particular. We will cover all of that shortly.
Absolutely. We will so much look forward to very much, very much. Mr. John is just below us here. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Looking forward to this one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nice and short. Excellent. He's been practicing being concise over the last 25 episodes, and he's nailing it. Not going to
Yeah.
add anything to it. Yeah, I'm fine. Move on.
Give it time.
Thank you. Give it time. Oh, dear. Right. So, where we're going to start? We're going to start in the most obvious place. It's the place we always start, in the north. And we will be starting over here, over in the northwest, the exact place where Gareth told us there's some movers and shakers, and you are not kidding. The top three there, exactly as you were, but every other position has been ups and downs. So, plenty to talk about in terms of relegation, and hopefully a little bit to talk about in terms of what's going on at the top. So, Gareth, over to you, sir.
So I'll start off with the top because it looks on the surface as though not an awful lot has happened. And truth be told, it hasn't really. Since we last spoke, there's only been the one game. Darwin this weekend dropped points against Bury FC with what looked like an absolutely cracking 3-3 draw. Darwin have dropped points recently in their last few games. Kind of dropping points against Mancunian Unity, and then to drop points against Bury as well. They're 2 points behind, and there's only 3 games left of their season. So it's looking like that's going to be difficult. That would require Wythenshawe to lose a substantial number of those games, and they've not lost any so far. So it's looking strong for Wythenshawe. The other team with several games in hand is Mancunian Unity. However, although they have moved up the table, last Thursday they drew 1-1 away to Fleetwood Town. So huge point for Fleetwood. That's dragged them up a little bit towards that mid-table. Although, possibly still not out of danger yet, but we'll get to the bottom end shortly. Unity then on Thursday dropped those points. Fast forward to Sunday, where they play West Didsbury and Chorlton, and they draw again. So that's 4 points dropped. I think Unity would agree with me that that's 4 points dropped. If you're challenging for a title, you wanted to push teams for a title, you can't afford to drop 4 points in the space of 4 days. So it's tricky playing Thursday and Sunday, but where that it is the consequence of having such a good FA Cup run. The weather is going to play a part as well, but sometimes you can be victims of your own success, and I think Unity with that Thursday night game potentially have been there as well. So Mancunian Unity have dropped points. What that means, essentially, for the league title is that Wythenshawe need 9 points to seal the championship. Wythenshaw's next 3 league games are Crewe away this coming weekend. Then there's a weekend break for the Cup. Then they play West Didsbury at home, and then Fleetwood Town at home. So they're the next 3 games for Wythenshaw. Win all 3 of those, and they will be champions. So, by not the next time we look at this, because looking at the way we've been kind of going around, it's been every couple of weeks. But by then, things could be looking good towards the top. Now, down the bottom, we've kind of seen some of those other teams taking points out of people. Bury taking points away from Darwen, Fleetwood, and West Didsbury taking points off Mancunian Unity. Those points are all important, but none as important as FC United taking 3 points from Crewe this weekend. The week before, they lost 2-1 against Fleetwood Town. So Fleetwood, 4 points in this period of time. You could have thought they really need, you could argue that actually they had to beat Crewe. They had to. They needed to have a bit of a gap with 1 game left to play. They have 1 game left, and I believe that game is against Bury. So, again, it's another game that they'll be looking to get something out of, and then it's over to Salford to see what Salford do. FC now do not play a league game, I believe, until roughly this time next month. I think it's the 23rd of March, their next league game. They've got a cup game in that time, or a plate game in that time, but they will not play their last game of the season until towards the end of March. So who knows what the league will look like by then. It could be that Salford go out and win at the weekend. It could be that by that point they're as good as down if Crewe beat Wythenshaw this weekend and Salford get some points. So who knows what's going to happen, but they'll be going into that last game of the season thinking that if we get something out of this, we can stay up. And you look at it now, Salford have only won 2 games all season. They've won the fewest out of everybody in the league. They've got to find the win from somewhere. They can't rely on draws. Really, you would have to draw. You would imagine all of your games for the rest of the season to be comfortable. They need to find the win. They've only found 2 in 15 games, which means, you could argue they're due a win. One of those wins, I think, was against FC. So you could argue that they are due a win. You could also argue that I don't know where it's going to come from. So an awful lot to play for down the bottom end of that table, and that relegation battle is certainly getting down to the business end now. Every game coming around is important, but to have 1 game left and only be 3 points clear, it is huge for FC actually, and that'll be a relief knowing that they can get results and they can have positive wins, but they will need to take that into their last game of the season. And I think going into their plate game as well, they'll be looking to try and build some momentum in there on the 9th of March, and then it's just going to be a case of you've got that one last cup final at the end of the season against Bury, and it will have that cup final. For those that don't know, FC United, when they first formed, ground shared at Gig Lane with Bury. So there's history between those clubs, friendly history, but also they occupy similar areas of Manchester. That'll be a grudge match. They'll be wanting to go, both teams, and will need 3 points at that point, you imagine. So yeah, super interesting, all to play for. But the bottom end, looking like there's more to play for towards the bottom than there is towards the top. It's not going to call anything too much, but 9 points from them 7 games will see Wythenshaw as champions.
There you go. This is quite something happening there in the Northwest, and we've been watching this with just absolute open eyes. It really has blown me away, this league. And as you mentioned, Wythenshaw doing incredibly well at the top there. But that relegation battle is just mad. It really, really is. And so close. And like you say, FC United with just 1 game to go, which is a little bit crazy. But there we go. Right, over to the place where John doesn't quite call home. Now, it's very interesting because when we talk to John, John has his places. He's got his teams that he loves. But it's a little bit like the Wizard of Oz, this one. You know, you've got the Wicked Witch of the West and the Wicked Witch of the East. And John would be the Wicked Witch of the West. Unfortunately, the Wicked Witch of the East is under a house somewhere, so he's going to have to cover this one as well. So, dear boy, it's over to you for the smallest league out of Tier 5 at the moment with teams going out. So just the 9 teams in this league. It's over to you, sir. A little bit of traffic up the top. Everything else looking pretty static.
Yeah, just the 9 teams and just the 2 games, unfortunately. So I can't say too much, although there is quite a few things to say that I will throw in there as well. So yeah, just the 2 games because there was County Cup games going on as well. So I will just touch on those very slightly at the end. But yeah, so just the two games on the 23rd. That was Basford United 1 and Stamford AFC Women 4. So yes, I'll just go through the goal scorers, then I'll talk a little bit about the league table as well. So Georgia Gladwin for the home team scored for them, and Andrea Oliveira scored 1, with Emma Pollard scoring a hat-trick for the away team. And you're going to hear quite a bit of that name, Emma Pollard, throughout this show, and also ones going forward, I'm pretty sure. So that puts Stamford FC Women into 3rd, but they played more games than any other team around them. Basford United ladies are currently 8th. And the other game was Chesterfield ladies 3 and Ansty Norbads 0. So Chesterfield are currently top of that league. Those probably my favourites over Christmas when I started to look at this league a little bit more, just because of how what their network base is like, what the teams around them geographically. I was always thinking if they get promoted, they could quite easily put up a good fight in the National League. So it's definitely one that I've been keeping an eye on and asking around about as well. The goal scorers for that team was Jordan Atkin, Imogen Fowler, and Millie Standen. And that win puts Chesterfield top of that league. However, they are equal on points and equal on goal difference with second place team Sheffield FC Women. Sheffield have got a game in hand as well, and their next game is against a team that I've just mentioned a little earlier, Basford United. So very tight at the top, as you mentioned. And I'll just go through some stats for you that we don't usually mention, just the league's leading goal scorers. So Millie Herbert Clark has got 15. She plays for SJR Worksop. Emma Pollard, which I mentioned earlier, she's got 14. And Alicia Gale with 11 goals. So I just thought I'd throw them in because we don't always go through some stats for the league. So because we've only got a couple of games to talk about, I just thought I'd throw that in there. And also one of my favourites, the opposition player of the match. And I think this doesn't really get spoken about much, but you can get the access on FA full time. But I always think it's sort of good when you see who the opposition go for, and it's not always the best players in the whole league. But it's sometimes like the goalkeeper. We've seen that quite a bit at Stourbridge because obviously our goalkeeper there comes under a lot of threat quite a bit. So even in Tier 4, their goalkeeper is always like one of the most higher rated players. So just in regards to this league, it's Ainsley Allen of Nottingham Trent University with 7, and funnily enough, they're bottom of that league. And Emma Pollard again for Stamford AFC. So certainly a name that's floated around. So I'm going to have to do a bit of research on that player because that seems to be quite a name that keeps turning up. So just regarding the league, so yeah, Chesterfield ladies sitting with 22 points, having played a game more than Sheffield FC Women on 22 points. And towards the bottom, Ansty Norbads on 11. Basford United on 6 points, and Nottingham Trent University also on 6 points. And the County Cup games, so there was a couple of games there. SJ Worksop won 2-0 away to Kiverton Park. That was in the Sheffield and Hampshire County Cup. County Cup. And also in the same cup, Sheffield FC Women lost on penalties 5-3 to Brunsmere AFC Women. And that would obviously be quite a shock there, being in a lower league. So yeah, just the 2 games in that league, but certainly looking forward to seeing how that one pans out and who's going to be joining the National League next season.
Indeed.
John,
Absolutely. I was
sorry,
going to say Gareth had a question, so in you go.
do they is it 7th, 8th, and 9th? All three of them teams are relegated.
Yes, yeah,
mad. So,
it is, and I did mention this on the pre-recorded one. So when I was at a game and I pre-recorded it, it is mad. The league should have 10. I think one team kind of like forfeited or something. Someone fell away, so there was originally 10. But the reason why they relegate 3 is obviously because there's 3 leagues below them. So the winner of the 3 leagues below them go up. But there is usually 10 teams, but one's obviously fell away. So yeah, it is a bit mad. So it keeps the pressure on because you can't afford to. If you're like a mid-table team, it is mental. If you're a mid-table team, you can't afford to just sit on your laurels and just relax. You have to keep that pressure on, or else you will fall in and you will fall away. So I kind of like it to some aspect because it does keep the pressure on the teams, not to just sit back and think to themselves, well, we don't want to get promoted, we don't want to get relegated, let's just sit here. I don't think you can do that in this league. But on the flip side, it's crazy, isn't it?
I think if you're Anstey, you feel quite sad about that, don't you? Because they look like the ones that will probably bear the brunt of that.
Yeah, and like what I was going to say is, if there were 10 teams in there, then it will kind of make sense. But I'm just trying to figure out how. I don't know why they would then still relegate 3, and then not just infill that gap from the 3 you might bring up. Then that's sorted, and then bring an extra one up from the county leagues below it from tier 7. I don't know. There's probably a reason for it, but I guess this is Type B because I know there are some leagues that are looking to move to Type B, which is this. You've got your Premier Division and then 3 underneath. So the East Midlands Premier obviously already have that. I know the Northwest are the kind of the whole part of the plan for the restructuring would be some of the Type B stuff coming in. So I guess we could see it kind of a bit here, there, and everywhere, which would definitely be interesting to see. Like you say, you can't rest on your laurels in the middle because it just is what it is.
It's an interesting point on that though, like what as well, like why still relegate 3, because we spoke about it off air and we will speak about this more going forward towards the end of the season, I'm sure. But the Championship announced at the start of the season that they would only relegate 1 because of the Reading situation. So they came out and says, well, we'll just relegate the 1 now. Whereas here they're still relegating 3. So as Barry says, there must be some reason behind it. But yeah, interesting.
I suppose the problem with it is, well, yeah, I mean, if you relegate 2, does it fluff up one of the other leagues in terms of the numbers that they're going to have? Because how does that work? Do they then just relegate 1 less from their league, and then which league is the one that only gets to have 2? It all becomes very, it's tricky, and this is why we need to make sure that clubs are financially sustainable and able to compete at the levels they're at, because otherwise it's not really very helpful. I wanted to ask, seeing as how you brought it up, you've all spoken about the opposition player in a match, and you say it's always nice to be picked by the opposition. I'm intrigued as to how you guys do it at yours. I often have to go and ask our gaffer who they've chosen, and if it gets to a particular point of the day, sometimes I just choose it. That's all that's left to fill it. I'll write that down. But yeah, I'm intrigued. Is it a full coaching decision? Is it just the manager who chooses it? How do your teams sort out the opposition player of the match?
I honestly don't know, so I'll pass it over to Gareth because I generally don't know if it's like a team discussion or if it's just something that's filled out a piece of paper that someone decides. I generally don't know, so I'll hand it over to you on that one, Gareth. I don't know if you ever get involved in that.
Yeah, ask the gaffer, and if there are any other coaches stood around him or any players stood around, then they'll probably jump in with the discussion. But very much depends on where James is stood and who he stood with, and we'll come to a decision as, excuse the sirens, come to a decision with whoever is around at that point. But yeah, usually it's similar to you, Barry, kind of just hunt down the gaffer and see what they think.
Yeah, it's always fun trying to hunt them down. That's why I'm pleased to do the interviews with them as well. That just makes it a little bit easier. Right, lovely. Over to London we go. And it's the same sort of things happening here, but I talk about things happening at the top, things happening at the bottom. Doesn't seem too much like anything is happening at the top and at the bottom, but it absolutely is, because the movers and shakers in the middle are really in a very precarious position, depending on which end of the table you're at. So we'll kick off at the top. Dartford, not in the position they would most like to be in, you would imagine, having just drawn against Fulham. We knew that was going to be a really big one. Fulham have got like 700 games in hand, as you can see, sitting there in fifth. But they're now just a 6 in hand with Dartford. And as we know, that is going to be 18 points. And that will take them, if they were to win all of them, of course, on 244. So this is what I mean about Dartford not being overjoyed with a draw against Fulham, because Fulham could technically still get themselves up and above Dartford. Dorking, probably the happiest side over that draw, with 2 wins for themselves, a 3-2 win against Sutton and a 2-0 win against Sport London e Benfica. And massive results for them, because that has it's just kept them in touch. It means Dartford have got to be on their mettle over the last 6 games, because if they are not, then they are definitely going to struggle. Saltdean also very content, a little win for them against Hayward Heath, but only a 1-0 victory, which for a side at the bottom of the table that's got a goal difference of negative 34 is not necessarily a massive win. So that's huge. This is what I mean. Hayward Heath done incredibly well there, really, to maintain such a small goal difference in what was really quite a big match for them. But Saltdean, again, 5 games in hand over the team at the top in Dartford, and that would put them on to potentially 43 points. So again, you see now why it was important that Dartford really needed to go and get 3 points against Fulham if they were holding hopes of winning the title. But for now, that is where they sit. Looking a little bit further down, Barking obviously managed to jump up a little bit as well with a 5-2 win over Ashford United, and that has again moved them up a little bit, but they were never really in the title hunt. For them, it is very much a case of consolidation and just finishing as high as they possibly can. The Millwall Lionesses won 3-1 also against Ashford United, hence why Ashford have struggled to get out of the bottom 2. But for Millwall, very good for them. Again, it's not really going to cause a huge difference. It's just for pride, really, that they are playing. Ebbsfleet didn't play at all, hence why they have dropped down. New Haven with a 6-1 win against Sport London. And this is the thing, those bottom 3 teams all losing. So it's so tight. Hayward Heath, they literally need 3 wins, but they've only played 12. So technically, in a 22-game season, they've still got 10 games to go. They've still got 30 points. So if we wanted to be really, really crazy, Saltdean at the moment are still not safe, which is quite mad mathematically. Obviously, I'm sure Saltdean will be fine. But it just goes to show the wild disparities between how many games are left for so many of them. And this is what we notice massively at Tier 5. So some huge games that have happened there. Over the next couple of weeks, it's going to be a bit hit and miss in terms of games that will be played. Barking will miss next week's fixtures on the 2nd, because they will be off to play hashtag in the Essex County Cup. Dartford and Dorking will be playing in the League Cup, which for them is again quite a big thing. So again, these teams at the top won't necessarily be playing too much, and of course Millwall and Fulham will also be playing in the League Cup. So again, teams like Saltdean will have the opportunity to try and put that pressure on the teams above them. Ebbsfleet will be playing Sport London. That's quite a big one for Sport London. It's definitely a winnable game for Sport London there, but they will have to work incredibly hard away from home, while Saltdean will face Sutton and will probably fancy their chances to break the 30-point barrier. But when you move to the 9th, and there is just the 4 games being played on that weekend, Millwall will play Fulham. So again, Fulham will be looking to try and beat a side that are very close to them, but not really, because again of the 6-game differential. Hayward Heath will be playing Ashford United. So there might have been a little bit of jokey going in there when we're talking about they can still catch Saltdean, But a win there, they move themselves back onto a positive point difference. And if Sport London have not managed to get points either there or against Sutton, which we'll see they will play on the 9th, really, really, really big 3 points potentially there for Haywards Heath. But equally, if Ashford United was to win it, they could potentially be out of the relegation zone. And you have to think at that point that might well be curtains for Haywards Heath. Saltdean as well will be playing Dartford that weekend. And again, that's a huge one. For Dartford again, they have to beat Saltdean. We spoke earlier about how they needed to get the win against Fulham. It's now really big. If they can get the win against Saltdean, it's not a relegation 6-pointer, but it's definitely a top of the table 6-pointer. And if they can get a victory there, that would certainly boost the chances of Saltdean and Fulham even further. And Dorking, I'm sure, will be delighted sitting there watching, knowing they're still 4 points behind and level on games. So it's really genuinely quite exciting just looking at what's going on in that league. And this is what I mean. Top of the table, bottom of the table, all across tier 5, anything can happen. And it's quite exciting. So there we go. That is London and the South East. Whilst I rest my voice, we're going to move over to the beautiful Gareth, who is going to talk about the North Eastern Regional.
Yeah, this region as well, hotting up. The less so, I think, towards the bottom of this league than towards the top. It looks as though, with 5 games to play, when you have only won 6 points in those first 15 and then had all of them taken off you, it looks like it's going to be a tough ask for Hull United to stay up. You suspect that they would need to do better than they have in the first 15 games in the last 5 to even have a chance of staying up, and that would rely on York Railway Institute to lose games. We mentioned a couple of weeks ago that they were facing off against each other and they drew 1-1, which for York isn't hugely ideal, but they've not lost any ground to Hull, whereas for Hull it was huge. They could have closed that gap from 7 points down to 4, and now it's at 8. Looking kind of at games coming up, both of those two sides have tricky games at the weekend, both away. York away to Chester-le-Street and Hull United away to Pontyland United as well. Hull will then host Wallsend the week after, so that is a huge game. It's an opportunity where they've got more of an opportunity to try and take points, whereas York Railway Institute will travel to Sunderland West End. So next week for both teams, this coming weekend, difficult for both of those sides in that relegation battle, but the week after there's opportunities for points, as all of the bottom 4 will play each other. Now I imagine, given that they can only achieve a maximum of 15 points, the Harrogate, Wallsend, Sunderland are probably safe from the drop. I think it would require something really, really special from Hull United to be able to overhaul that 12-point gap. And then it would require a massive drop off from Sunderland to fall into that as well. So that's tricky. I think it is going to be between Hull and York, and I think one more win from York in those last 5 games will seal the deal. Looking kind of towards the top end of the table, Pontyland United sitting 7 points clear. However, Chester-le-Street have 5 games in hand, and Bradford City, who are 11 points adrift, have 6 games in hand. So both of those sides could overhaul Pontyland United during the run-in. Like we say, Pontyland United playing against one of those, both Pontyland and Chester-le-Street playing against the bottom 2 this week. So both sides would be going into that expecting to get the win. Bradford City, though, they've been there or thereabouts towards the top end of the midfield as we've been going kind of gradually through the year. coming down from the National League previously. A couple of years ago, I think they came down. Excuse me. They'll be looking to try and put some pressure on Chester Street. Win that game in hand. They're 1 point behind, and all we've seen from Mancunian Unity, we've seen from Darwin over in the northwest that it only takes one result. It takes one or two bad results, an off weekend, some lack of availability, and things can turn on a sixpence. So, Brad will be hoping to keep that pressure up on Chester Street. Both of those sides, I would expect to see overtake Ponteland. I think. I know I've said many, many times so far this season. At this point, I'd rather have points on the board. At this point, I'd rather have points on the board. I think when you've lost 3 games and there are sides behind you that have only lost 1, you've lost several points. You don't want to be looking over your shoulder constantly, just waiting on a Sunday at about 4 o'clock to see what's happening and whether you've been overtaken. You want to be in control of your own destiny. At the moment, Chester Street are in control of their destiny. They win all their games, they're champions. Bradford City have a lot of control over their destiny as well. You would expect that if they win their remaining games, then they will be champions as well, because they have to play Chester Street towards the back end of the season. So both of those sides win every game, they're champions. Ponteland don't have that luxury. So I'm not going to call which way it's going to go. I think it's super close between those two sides. But Chester Street and Bradford both going for it, and that game a few weeks towards the end of the season could be absolutely massive.
Could be indeed. And I think it's been a really good season for Chester Street Town from what we have seen from watching from afar. And absolutely, I think, like you say, when all those games become champions, it's definitely something that they might well do. There we go. That is the Northeast Regional. We are going to move over to the Wicked Witch of the West now, so that he can have a little chat about what's going on there. My goodness, there are a few games to look through on this one. A few changes again, but interestingly, we've got changes at the top, changes in the middle, changes in the bottom, and of course, a little dark horse there. John, what can you tell us?
You mentioned someone having 6 games in hand. There's a team there that I'll come back to at the end who have a little bit more than that, which is absolutely crazy. Let's start at the top, just a bit like what Gareth did in the first roundup. Almost a full fixture list, not quite. Camden Court and Shifnal Town didn't play last weekend, but everybody else did. Light Town 5, Shrewsbury 1. Cracking result for them, Shrewsbury, as you can see in the league. They are really pushing. They've done a fantastic in the cups this year as well. So for Light Town to win that game 5-1, they will be absolutely made up with that. It was quite a close game because in the first half, Zoe Child scored for Shrewsbury after 30 minutes. So it wasn't all good. It wasn't a foregone conclusion until later on in that second half. When Natasha Baptiste, Macy Fox, Chloe Handy, Sean Johnson and Michelle Pascoe all on the score sheet for the league leaders. So that's 3 points gained and a +4 goal difference for Light Town in the title race last weekend. However, Kidderminster Harriers must have said, anything you can do, we can do better, at least for that week alone, because Kiddie Harriers won 7-0 against Solihull Sporting. Bess Gallagher scored 2, got player of the match. Captain Amber Lawrence got on the score sheet. 2 goals for Alex Nicklin, not the first time that we've heard that in her career. And 1 goal for each of the Rogers sisters, Mill and Grace Rogers, both scoring to make it 7-0. So great results for them. And that puts the Harriers 4 points behind Light Town. 2 goals behind them as well, and a goal difference. So they're closing that goal difference up now. But they do have 2 games in hand. But they also have to play Light Town twice as well. So absolutely massive occasions to come for those two teams. Third place Shifnal didn't play, but they are gradually losing ground now. So going into Christmas, they was right up there. They deserved to. I think they only dropped points in just one game at that point. However, they are just gradually slipping away now, and they have played one game more than Kiddie-Hammies as well. A bit further on down, like mid-table, Burton 2, League 2. So this was 6th versus 7th in the league. So there's Burton are 3 points clear of League, but they have got 3 games in hand of them. So you'd expect to see Burton really consolidate their place in the top half of that league. Stephanie Kingston with a brace for the home team in the 7th and 48th minute, and Lily Fallon scored and also got sent off for the away team, with Katie Mayer also scoring for the away team. Cov Sphinx 2, Alvechurch 1. So Poppy Johnson Smith with a double for Cov Sphinx, and Alicia Sheridan for Alvechurch. So that's Sheridan's 14th of the season now. So I think she's something like the second leading goal scorer in that league, which is quite stunning, to be fair. And Cov Sphinx, with that win, has now leapfrogged Solihull Sporting, which just took them out of the relegation zone. So that was a massive win for Cov Sphinx. And finally, Noel Ladies 1, Port Vale 4. So Noel at the foot of the table with just 3 points, and Port Vale in a deceiving position, let's say, in 9th, because they played 10 games less than the team above them. Only 8 games played so far this season. So expect quite a few midweek games if they can fit them all in. Katie Atta scoring for Noel, and then for Port Vale, Lexi Harrison, Sean McHugh with 2, and Olivia Mountford all on the score sheet for Port Vale. And I think for Port Vale, I mean, they're not going to win every game, and even if they did, they wouldn't get top. But it's been a shame, really, because Port Vale signed some great players in the summer, and everyone was expecting, good things of them. But because they haven't played enough games, they've never really been at the top. And I really hope that they can get all the games in just to kind of see exactly where they can finish in that league, because, I think, unfortunately, they've gone under the radar because of the league position. But it's a shame, because I do think that they could have really pushed on if they had played all their games at the same time as everybody else. Would they be where the Shrewsburys are, if not pushing higher, a bit like Shifnal? So let's see, and I think that we will finish the season strong. I mentioned Lexi Harrison there. She's a great player. She played in Tier 3 for many years, played for TNS as well. So she's doing wonders up there already. So let's see where this season goes. But what I would say, just to finalise, apart from Port Vale, I think at the top, the games are kind of levelling out now. So we saw Shifnal having 3 games ahead of some teams. It's now just a 1 game ahead. So I think it's kind of balancing out a little bit now with the games played. And you can kind of see where the title challenges are and where the relegation battles are as well now.
You absolutely can. And as you said, what was really sad, I think, down the bottom there for Coventry and Solihull Sporting was Solihull had drawn their a game or so there. They'd done, I thought, quite well, but it's not looking good for them. Coventry Sphinx jumping above them, but that thing up there with Kidderminster as well. What a time that must be for you, John. So we've had that little goal difference there, turn around, and it really does look very, very promising for Kidderminster Harriers up at the top of the West Midlands. So there we go, right down to me on the Eastern region now, and an interesting sort of development, really, when it comes to the Eastern region, but mostly down the bottom. You can see there's a few ups and downs, just the 3 teams moving up and therefore a few other teams jumping down. So it's not hard to see how those shifts have happened. Royston haven't played. They've had some torrential rain and all sorts of things. So they've had games called off. So nothing for Royston. Luton, however, have managed to play a game. They beat Bowers and Pitsea 2-0 last weekend. And obviously that has kept them in second position, whereas Haringey Borough didn't play. Hence, Stevenage with a 2-1 win over St Albans were able to move into third spot. Now, it's a little bit more nuanced at the top here. Royston Town obviously out in front by 10 whole massive points. But they're only 4 games ahead of Luton Town. Luton, therefore, can get 12 points, which would put them on to 39 as it stands. And so Luton currently are the side to beat in terms of the league. But as Gareth always says, much better to have the points on the board, especially when you start looking at how Luton Town's fixture list is really starting to get congested towards the end of the season for reasons that I'll speak about in just a moment as well. But really tricky for them. They will have, I think at one point, they might have 4 games in sort of 10 or 12 days, which is quite a lot to get through. Haringey Borough, as I said, did not play. They're not really in the title hunt. Stevenage can reduce the arrears to Royston to just 7 points, and they still need to play Luton and Royston once each. So they can potentially pull points against each of those teams, but it does require Luton and Royston to drop points elsewhere. So it's not the easiest of things to do for Stevenage, but third, certainly looking like an incredibly achievable aim for them. St Albans City have had a bit of a resurgence. They won 1 and lost 1 in the last 2 games. Obviously, they lost to Stevenage, you just mentioned, but they've also beaten Bowers 5-0, which was a massive one for them. It's given them a good old goal difference there now compared to some of the teams below them, which hence is why they've jumped above Dussindale, who have lost 1 game in the last fortnight, where they lost to Wroxham. So quite big for Dussindale there, and as a result of those losses, the goal difference has dropped down massively. So hence why St Albans are in 5th. Enfield Town didn't play, so nothing too spectacular for them. Dussindale, as we said there, now they're only 4 games away from the end of the season for them. So they can literally only get to 34 points. That is as good as it gets for them. So the title's gone for Dussindale, that's for sure. Wroxham have won 2 games since their little double header against Stevenage, which did not go the way of Wroxham. They have rebounded, done incredibly well. They beat Dussindale, as we just mentioned, but they've also managed to beat Watford Ladies Development. They've knocked up their goal difference a little bit as well, which is a positive one amongst a sea there of negative goal differences. And obviously, with 20 points and a few games in hand on the teams above them, will be looking to make it into the top half of the table. Bowes and Pitsea are having an absolute nightmare as it stands at the moment. They've lost to Luton, they've lost to St Albans, they've lost their manager. They've got a new one in, and the new one is Dean Perrett. And Dean Perrett has been around the block a few times when it comes to football management. He used to manage Real Bedford, who, as you'll all recognise, are a side in Tier 4 right now. They've been working incredibly hard. He doesn't manage them anymore. He hasn't gone from Real Bedford over to here. He left about halfway through the season when they were winning the Eastern region. But nonetheless, he is a guy who knows how to win and a guy who works incredibly hard. So Bowers will be hoping that the installation of Dean Perrett in the management position will steer them away from the potential relegation battle that they are increasingly close to getting engulfed in. Watford Lady Development, as we said, lost to Wroxham, so they are moved down because Wroxham jumped above them. The big thing is over here at Needham and Cambridge, and I said down the bottom it doesn't feel like much is really happening, but that's actually where the big stories are at the moment. It absolutely is. So Needham Market lost a game this week. Cambridge City won a game this week, and that was against each other, and it was quite a win. It was a 3-0 win for Cambridge City. It was at home, but it's pulled them 3 points behind Needham Market. Now, why is this interesting? It's interesting because at the weekend they're going to play again. They've got the reverse fixture, this time at Needham Market. Now, if Cambridge can win that, you don't need to be a mathematical genius to realise that Cambridge will then be level on points with Needham Market and will actually move off the foot of the table for the first time this season, I think, so that they can jump above Needham Market on goal difference. And then all of a sudden, they're only 3 points behind Watford Ladies Development, depending on what happens between Watford and Dussindale and Hellidston. So it's very, very possible that Cambridge City could be fighting for their lives. If they don't win, it's going to make a bit of a mockery of my next statement. But a big win there for Cambridge will then mean that when they go up against Luton Town the week after, all of a sudden, that doesn't become the easiest game for Luton, because Cambridge there, with a couple of wins under their belt, a little bit of moxie about them, could very well cause Luton a little bit of damage, depending on how they approach the game. So lots there to look forward to down the bottom of the table. There's some massive games. Cambridge, though, have got it tough. They've got to play Royston, I think, a couple of times as well. It's not a simple end of the season for them. In terms of other fixtures to look forward to, Luton and Royston and Stevenage and Enfield will be playing in the League Cup semi-finals of the Eastern region, so they won't be in action next weekend in the league. So that will be helpful for Haringey, because if they can beat Wroxham, they will be likely, well, they won't be likely, they will jump into third place, and depending on how much they win by, potentially into second. But again, probably not likely to trouble the champions elect. Other than that, we have got the week after Royston playing Enfield, which will be, again, quite a big one for them, but Royston will feel like they'll take the 3 points there. St Albans will be facing Wroxham. Needham Market will be facing Stevenage. So that is, again, a huge game at the bottom of the table, and Needham won't be making it any easier. And again, if they've got the win over Cambridge City, you can guarantee that's going to be a massive game against Stevenage, because, again, it could get them out of the relegation zone. Because it won't be with their goal difference, that's for sure. And Bowes and Pitsea will face Haringey Borough. So Haringey could very well be on 30 points the next time we look at this league. So loads up. I don't know why I've turned that off. There's 2 more leagues that I had to show you. I don't know why. That's absolutely mad. I got all excited. I thought, we've done it. We've spoken about everything we need to speak about. But I lie. I'm going to run you through very quickly. We're not going to go into the usual in-depth chats that we go with this, but needless to say, Southwest Premier, as you can see, that there's not a huge amount going on there. Marine won their games, so they have remained at the top. They are just miles away from Forest Green Rovers, who can only get to 35 points as it stands anywhere. Torquay did not play, but with their 5 games in hand, can make it to 40, and really are the only team that can cause Marine Academy to be removed from the top of the table without Marine having to lose a game for it to happen. Down at the bottom, AFC St Austell are probably, of all of the sides that we've looked at so far, the favourites for the drop. Bishop's Lydiard, though, are definitely in a bit of a tussle with Paulstown and Pucklechurch Sports, especially as all 3 teams there at the bottom lost at the weekend, with Poole losing their last 2 games. Nice win for Sherborne, and indeed a win for Forest Green, hence why they have moved up above Torquay. And also wins for AEK Boko and Ilminster Town, but not enough to make any changes in the league. And last but not least, the Southern Premier, 10 teams in this one, and not a lot of matches at all. I can confirm that Ascot didn't play, Portchester didn't play, Sholing didn't play, Winchester City Flyers didn't play, Reading didn't play, and Chelsea didn't play. So the vast majority of them dropping down for that reason. There was, however, a win for Wycombe Wanderers, which pushed them up above Oxford City. We have also got a win for Woodley, which has put them up above AFC Portchester. Badshot Lee, good news for them. They had a draw and a loss, but that draw has taken them out of the relegation zone purely down to goal difference. Chelsea lost their game at the bottom of the table. So again, you're looking at this one. Ascot and Wycombe are on exactly the same number of games. Oxford City have played more. Woodley have played more. Portchester are the only one with games in hand, but not enough really to bother Ascot. So it does look like Ascot United will be competing in the WNL Southwest next season as it stands, but there are still 6 games to go for them. At the bottom, though, that is absolutely crazy, because it is any 2 from 3. Winchester City are absolutely no drama here. They are completely out of it. You would think Reading are the favourites because they've got the few games in hand over Badshot Lee, but they've got to win them. And with those goal differences for Badshot, Reading and Chelsea, I think it's incredibly clear that absolutely anything can happen there. Chelsea haven't won a game all season. Badshot Lee haven't won a game all season. Reading have, but yet they are the ones that are below the dotted line. So, I mean, I don't know what you guys are thinking about this bottom of the table clash in the Southern Premier, but I would argue that this one, possibly the most exciting out of all of the leagues we've looked at in terms of the relegation zone.
I think so. I think, to echo what I said a fortnight ago, what's happened to Reading is an absolute travesty. To go from the Championship last year to this year is a disgrace, frankly. And whoever signed off on it is an embarrassment to football, I think. Just the way that entire club has been run is an absolute embarrassment. So, I hope for the sake of the fans that have stuck with them throughout this season, I hope that they can find something and stay up and have that sort of ounce of joy after what has been a torrid 12 months by all accounts. So, super interesting though. I think all the other leagues you can kind of stick a pin in somebody, one or two teams, whereas this, it's total coin flip, I think.
You're not kidding.
Yeah.
And John, I know that you want to jump in on this, but I was just looking at the fixtures that are coming up, and the next game that Badshot Lee will be playing on the 9th of March. They're not playing on the 2nd because it's a County Cup game, but on the 9th of March, in 2 weeks' time, they will be facing Reading FC Community Trust. So literally the next game that will happen before we talk about these leagues again, it will be Badshot Lee against Reading FC. Celsius will play in Oxford City. So a tough one for them. But I mean, somebody is going to do well out of that. They're either going to draw, in which case that's advantage Badshot, or one of them is going to win. And all of a sudden that's a whole 3 points difference. And just down there, that 3 points, it's like oxygen, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree with Gareth on what he was just talking about with Reading. But when 3 teams are so far adrift of the rest, it's all about looking at the games when you play each other and every point. And even looking at the goal average, every goal just means so much, doesn't it?
It really does. Wycombe will be playing Reading FC on the 18th of March. So that'll be quite a tricky one there. So lots happening. But again, with Wycombe doing as well as they are at the top there, you would think that could be quite a tricky game for Reading. So that game against Badshot, certainly looking like their best opportunity to get back out of that relegation zone. Well, boys, we have done it again. We've made it all the way through 8 leagues. It's always a little bit harder on the Tier 5 one because there's those 2 extra leagues to look at. They're going to be expanding the league soon. My goodness, it's going to end up being 2 hours extravaganzas as they go. But lots to look forward to. John, anything you want to add or shout out that you haven't had the chance to talk about?
No, just the game of the weekend for me has to be Halifax against Calcer, 10th versus 12th in Tier 3 North. So I'll be having a close eye on that game this Sunday.
Absolutely. Gareth, anything you'd like to throw out that you haven't had the chance to say? You don't have to come up with a game of the week. That was just John ad-libbing.
Just John throwing it back to pre-Christmas time.
Yes. Really was. Oh, those are the days we had to go hunting for a game of the week to be looking forward to. Well, listen, boys, absolute pleasure to have both of you on the show as ever. So thank you very much for joining us and giving up your evening. It's been a little bit later today, but we have made it through. Well done. And if you are one of those people who has been watching any of this live, thank you very much. Much appreciated. If you're one of those people who has not been watching it live and you've been watching it back, thank you for coming back to watch it. We really do enjoy putting this stuff out there. And, I know that it's not necessarily looking at it, all the bells and whistles and everything that you might want, but we're trying to fill a gap at the moment and we can only get better. Match of the day was rubbish once. Some might say it still is. Who knows? But we are doing what we can. Guys, thank you very much. We will be back next week. I'm sure we'll be looking at Tier 4 again. There's loads of stuff happening there. You can actually, John, do you want to shout out what you tagged All for Wofo in? Because there's some sort of big bits and pieces going on around the Midlands in the WNL?
Yeah, so something that we haven't discussed on purpose because this has been formally announced, but as Gareth mentioned Reading earlier, it kind of ties in perfectly well. So the Championship Tier 2 has only had 11 teams this season, so they will only be relegated one team, and they made that announcement at the start of the season, and that one team will obviously go into Tier 3, but there's 2 leagues in Tier 3. So to cut a long story short, one league in Tier 3 will have not enough teams, basically. So there will have to be some sort of something to happen out of the ordinary. And usually, in this scenario, an 11th place team will stay in the league. So that could be, at the moment, it could be a Billericay, who's 11th in Tier 3 South. It could be a Stourbridge, who are 11th in Tier 3 North. There's so many permutations to this, so I don't think it's fair to go into too much detail just yet into specific clubs. However, there will be definitely a twist in the relegation battle in Tier 3 to Tier 4 because of that reason.
There you go. So you've not shouted out where people can watch this lovely little fact that you've been talking about this.
Well, yes, no, absolutely, yes. So I will mention it because I never mentioned Stourbridge. Stourbridge are massively affected, of course. So we do have a little fan channel. We've had one for 3 years. So if you want to learn a little bit more about Stourbridge FC women, the past, present, and maybe the future, the Glass Girls Network, have a little look on there. We do interview players, parents, coaches, managers, all that kind of stuff. You can go all the way back to when Stourbridge got promoted 3 consecutive years, and everything else. So the glory years, and also maybe not the glory years, the Glass Girls Network, YouTube.
Thank you. Just it was the glory days. You're not wrong. For all of that conciseness that you showed right at the very beginning, we elongated it at the end there, John. Well played. You're clearly a tired boy. We'll let you go back to sleep. We'll pop you back in storage. We'll wheel you back out next week. Ready for Tier 4. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a brilliant week, and we will see you next week.